so honored to be here. I'm really just thrilled. I'm about the people, my colleagues who are here, and also the attendees who have come here. I'm just so impressed with your ideas and with your drive. I seriously, and I have such fraud syndrome. I'm like, what am I doing here? You know, it's so bad that I have a picture of me and Jay Leno from when I was a guest on his show. I used to keep it in a drawer in my house, and my friend came over and he said, why do you keep the picture of you and Leno in a drawer? And I'm like, if people see that, they're gonna think I was on Jay Leno. And of course, you know, I was, because I tell you, one of the things about being a writer is fear. Fear is such a corrosive element to creativity. So many writers experience it, and that is what keeps them from going forward. In fact, I'm now, after listening to Bob talk about pitches, I'm certain now that my show is never going to be made. And I'm terrified to pitch you a new idea after I saw you eviscerate about 50 people that came up there on stage. I'm teasing. I got your email address, so I'm totally going to harass you via that way. But I'm just, like I said, I'm so impressed with everybody here and the ideas that I've heard and the bravery of the people coming forward and putting your stuff out there, which is so necessary. And the other presenters who are here, like Peter Miller, I've been talking to my students about you for years. I've been pulling you up as an example of somebody that they should pitch to. Because one of the things I did in Atlanta was I started a learning center there, and I've never been associated with, I've always been freelance and I've always been on my own. I started out as a flight attendant for Delta Airlines, and I was terrified to fly. I was a terrible flight attendant. The only thing I really know how to do is write, but you can't just walk into a career as a writer. You have to, nobody's gonna tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, you know, would you like a career as a writer? You have to write. And in the meantime, you're pretty much foraging for food and just hoping somebody notices you. And for me, one way that I was able to put money on the food on the table was I became a flight attendant. Because I don't know if you've ever noticed, flight attendants really don't work. They just sit in the back and ignore you the entire time. And so I thought that was like a perfect job for me, and it was. The only thing is that I was terrified to fly. And I would be like on the cart. I was totally terrifying all the other passengers while I was at it. Like I'd be on the cart saying, I think I smell smoke, you know? And I did, I would like, and the other flight attendants were so amazing. They would always make sure that when we were taking off, I was sitting in the jump seat that was facing away from the passengers, so they wouldn't see my face as we were taking. I was certain we were just all gonna end up, you know, in a cul-de-sac. Crashed. I didn't want to be, and I was terrified of being like the flight attendant, you know, on the inside cover of Newsweek, dead with my skirt over my head. I was like more afraid of that. I'm more afraid of making a mess than I think I was afraid of actually dying. But this is what I did, because it gave me time to write. And I would be over there in Europe, because learned the German language in order to become and I was a terrible German interpreter. It took me 5 years to figure out that my name translates to hellish gargoyle in German. 5 years it took me to figure that out. And these are the things that I would write about while I was there, and I had no idea. I had no idea I was writing a book. I was kicking myself in the ass for 10 years for not starting my book. And then I started to write these stories while I was over there in Europe, or flying and being terrified. And I started publishing a little humor column in a tiny little newspaper in Atlanta called Poets, Artists, and Madmen. And I cultivated a cult following. And then the larger newspaper, Creative Loafing, which is one of the largest newspaper alternative papers in the nation, they took me on. And I didn't even know, if I had thought about actually having an audience, I don't think I would have written a single word of what I wrote. Then a local CNN anchor person knew a producer at NPR, the producer of All Things Considered. And he sent her some of my essays. And she called me and she said, we like some of this stuff. Let me talk to you for a minute and let's see if we can get you on the air. And of course I was able to talk to her because I never heard of All Things Considered. I was like, well, okay, whatever. And so she's put my commentaries on the air, and a producer called me. And the reason I'm telling you, there's a point, I promise. The reason I'm telling you this is because I had a publisher call me after a commentary I did on my dad, commentary I made on my dad's funeral. It was, my mother had accused my father, or excuse me, my mother had accused my father's mortician of stealing his shoes and then putting crappy shoes on his corpse in the casket. And that's what the commentary was about. And a publisher contacted me, but I was certain, I wrote this stuff, certain no one would ever read a word. Even when I was a columnist for Creative Loafing, I had in my head, I was never in Atlanta. Remember, I was a flight attendant. I had no idea how popular I was getting in my own city. I was never there. I was always off, flying away. And then NPR happened, and I'm thinking this whole time that HarperCollins gave me that big giant advance, I'm thinking nobody's gonna, I really pulled one over on the publishing company. Look at all the money they gave me for a book nobody's gonna read. And of course, and I put in there all kinds of stuff, like I called my brother-in-law cauliflower-faced alcoholic walrus. And now I have to, thinking, they'll never read this, nobody's gonna read it. And of course, the book comes out, and 3 days later, Jay Leno calls me, and he's like, and okay, Bob, here's my gimmick. I didn't even know I had one. But Leno called me because I was in Entertainment Weekly, and they put in there that I was a flight attendant, because I write about being a flight attendant a little bit. It's not, the book is not about being a flight attendant, because I was still employed by Delta. I was terrified of losing my job. But I wrote in there, of course, that I'm afraid to fly. Seriously, every time we take off, I think that I'm just can envision my kidney on a car antenna after a big crash. It's, oh, I'm sorry, y'all are eating. But anyway, sorry. Anyway, there's a couple of chapters in there about that. And that's the gimmick that he called me, because I was a flight attendant afraid to fly. So when I was on Leno, that's all, it's funny, I can't get the flight attendant book published, but that's all anybody ever wants to talk to me about, is being a flight attendant. And anyway, my point is, and I know it took a long way around to get to it, is that find your voice and honor your voice. And I'm so many of you are so much further than I was. All this had to happen to me behind my own back, because my creativity had to find a way to come forward, because if I knew it was making its way forward, I think I would have blocked it. It's kind of like those people that when you're in your car and you put your indicator light on and you're trying to get over, and the people speed up to keep you from getting over, so you have to not put, well, it's how it is in Atlanta anyway, you have to not put your indicator light on to get over to the lane next to you, in order to sneak over there, so because if the people behind you know you're trying to make your way over there, they won't let you in. That's what I struggled with. If I knew I was trying to get over to the other lane, I think I would have obstructed myself somehow. These are the things that I encounter, and I think a lot of writers have this, obstacles, these same obstacles that they're overcoming as far as getting their stuff out there. You have to be persistent. You have to understand that your process is as valid as other writers, as the process of other writers are. And honor that and help each other. It's different now. It used to be, back in the day, traditional writing, everybody kept their sources close to their chest. You couldn't pry the name of an agent out of a writer. You could not. Agents were hard to get a hold of. Everybody kept this very close. They just, everything was very tight, and writers didn't really help each other very much. Because if they did, they were creating competition for each other. These days, like Peter was saying that publishing is upside down now. One of the reasons is because of social media. Well, that is why writers now have to help each other. You have to lend each other your audience. You have to, it has to be, this is one of the ways that writers are going to survive, writers and journalists are going to survive extinction. They have to turn it around. It's upside down now. You have to help each other. You have to be open. You have to, you have to go out there. You have to meet each other. You have to do, well, I'm sure that was done before, but writers now help each other. So that's one of the reasons I started the Learning Center in Atlanta because one of the writers who helped me, and I was so grateful to him for it, I asked him how I could repay him, and he said, help other writers. And and I promised him I would. And then after, I'm certain, of course, that I would never be in a position to. And then, of course, after Leno and the film rights sold and all of that, I was helping so many other writers that I realized if I can't really help starving writers by becoming one of them again. So that's why I started the Learning Center. And that's, you know, and that's one of the, and I love to do it, and it enriches me as well. These are what writers are learning now, because it does enrich you to help other writers. And that's why I am so impressed with everybody who's here, you know, because that's what you're doing as well. You're really helping them, and I get so excited too. I've crashed every single conference that I could, and sat in the back and heckled the presenters as best I could. I was too terrified, though, Bob, to get up and pitch. Jodine was pushing me, do it, and I was like, I can't. So, but I have, like I said, I have your email. I'm going to be, you know, sending you the whole vampire, you know, idea on a plane, you know, vampire on a plane. And that way you can just shoot me down in private as opposed to public. But I'm impressed with how everybody's helping, the writers who are here, the presenters who are here to help them, and Jodine, I'm impressed with you. This is lovely. It's a lovely boutique conference. I love it. And I love my room. Thank you so much. And I'm enriched by being here. So thank you. Thank you, presenters. Thank you, attendees, for coming. And I hope that you're getting as much out of this as I am.